Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video on how to do a cost of supply study. This video is going to be focused on the Eskom power purchases tab. And the basic premise of this tab is that we take last year's full set of Eskom invoices. We input the kilowatt hours that we purchased for every month based on the time of use that they were purchased. We look at the demand for each month, for each intake point, and then I'll get to this in a little bit, but we also take reactive energy into account. This is a very important step in the cost of supply process because we base all of our assumptions on the consumption of Eskom electricity from last year, so year zero. Without this data, it's very difficult to get an accurate reflection of the costs. And inaccurate data here, especially in the Eskom power purchases, can throw out the results of the study, since most municipalities spend the bulk of their money on purchasing power from Eskom. So it's very important that we get this step right. I've been through this in a previous video, but you name these intake points here over on the index table. And if you want to see how you do that, you can watch the video on index tables. Once you've done that, you can see, as you know, the yellow cells, this is where we input all of our data. What you used to have to do was you would go to your Eskom bill, you would look here at your energy consumption off peak, you would go here and you would paste it in, and this became quite a long task because if you had lots of intake points, you'd have to repeat this process for 12 months of the year, for 3 different times of use, for however many intake points you had. Thankfully, there's a tool designed by Urban Earth that allows us to read the Eskom accounts. So if you come over here to the Embedded Generation Resource Portal at sseg.org.za, you then click on Tariff and Revenue Impacts, and you come down to the Cost of Supply Studies. You'll see that there's this Eskom account reader. You click on that, and it will download for you over there. Once you get into that, you'll land on this page over here, the home page. And Urban Earth, who designed the tool, have put a little bit of an instruction here, but I'll show you how to do it as well. What you must do is you go to the file where you've saved your Eskom bills. You click copy address as text. You then come back here and you So what you do is you go to the folder where your Eskom bills are stored, and you say copy address as text. You come here and you paste it in. At this point, I must stress that it's very important that the bills that you're using are the original PDFs. They can't be photocopies, they can't be pictures, they have to be the original PDFs that you receive from Eskom. The reason why is that the tool that they've designed uses Power Query, and it looks in these tables and looks for the values that we need to use in the tool. So it can't read a photocopy. It has to be like this. You can see that it's in table form. So very important. If you've got that right, as I said, you paste the link in here in the file path. You then go from home, the home tab, to the data tab like this, and you can click queries and connections on the side. You'll just see them on the side. You don't have to actually open that, but you click refresh all. You'll then see that you get the little hourglass thing, and you'll see at the bottom here, running background query. This will usually take a minute or two. All right, so it's loaded now the first time. And what you'll see here in the instructions is that you need to refresh the tool again. So once it's done loading, you hit refresh all again, and you'll see it starts loading again. You'll need to wait a few minutes again, and as soon as that's done, then everything will be populated. While we wait for it again, I need to point out that this tool will only work on later versions of Excel. If you're still using old versions of Excel, say Excel 2013, there's a chance that the Power Query might not work, and then you'll have to fill out the tool the old-fashioned way. So I would highly recommend using a later version of Excel. All right, so we can see now our queries have finished loading, and there don't seem to be any problems. This tab gives you a step-by-step guideline on how to do what I've just demonstrated for you now. It's quite useful to load. If you have any security issues on your computer, it shows you how to fix those, so you can see that you might have to change some privacy levels. I'm not going to go into that now, but if you do have issues, potentially try these different steps over here. You'll also then be able to see the different Eskom accounts. There's a tab called All Data, which this will show you everything that it's read off the tool. There's a summary of the NMD. Then there's a nice pivot table over here where you can see, you can play around and visualize all of your different charges. So you can see your consumption at peak time over the years remained relatively stable. It's a nice little tool to visualize your energy purchases. Then you get to what we are going to be focused on here is your energy report and your demand report. So now you can click here and you can select your financial year, which in our case is 23-24. It's read that from the Eskom bills. So if it was a 25-26 Eskom bill, it would say 25-26. You can then select you can see here, we've got off-peak, standard, and peak kilowatt hours for all of the months, just like that. So we didn't have to do it manually. We can check here, for example, July off-peak. You can see it's exactly the same. So we know that that's working. I must stress here, and this is a bit of a disclaimer, it is very important to check that these values align with your Eskom bills. You mustn't just blindly input them into the tool. It is important to verify that this has worked. So if you're happy that it's worked, what you can do is you copy that. You then come over here and you right click and say paste values. Now you can see it's populated everything for us, which is brilliant. Once we've done that for all of our intake points, we can go over to the demand, and we can see that there's the maximum demand and the notified maximum demand. Again, we'd like to check those. So we can see that the notified maximum demand is 23, over here demand reading 12,187. 12,187 and 23. So we're happy that that's working. So again, we'll copy all of that. Go over to our tool. We paste the values. We check that it's gone over. You see that these blue cells here are now filled, which means that the calculations are working. So we can move on to the next intake point and do that for all the intake points. If you happen to get to the bottom here and you see that these are empty, you need to make the power factor for all of the intake points, just make it 1. If these are left blank, it will completely throw your study out. So just if you are experiencing issues, just make sure that you've got 1s in there. Once you've done that, you're ready to move on to the next step. Another useful addition to this tool is the ability to take the tariffs from your Eskom bills, because as you can see on your Eskom bill, the tariffs are included here. So 223 Rand 36 per day, or 90 cents per kilowatt hour at off peak. That all comes from the Eskom tariff book. So if you happen to have your Eskom bills for year one, both high season and low season, you can feed them in to the tool in the same way that we did it for the energy report and the demand report, and it will spit out your year one tariffs. So in this example, I don't have year one, I've still got year zero, but the same applies. It will tell you what your high and low season energy charges were, your transmission network charges, all the way through. You can then use these to populate the tool in the main model. There is something important to look out for, and in discussion with the developers of the tool, we decided to leave it for you, is that if you are transitioning to Munich Flex, you'll know from a previous video I made on Eskom tariffs that you need to group the ancillary services, electrification subsidy, and legacy charges together to make space. But what they've done is they've grouped them for us. You can see here they've added all three together, but they've also given them on their own. So ancillary service charge, the electrification subsidy, and the legacy charge, and that way you'll be able to see if there's a problem with any of those pulling through. It's just easier to check. So you can't just come here and copy paste all of this into the main model. You would need to take the energy charge, paste that in over here, and just make sure that you're doing like for like. If you're taking the transmission network charge, you must make sure that you're taking from here and pasting it in there and not misaligning anything. Once you've done that, then you'll be able to move on to the next step. So this is just a nice way at speeding up the process. It's replaced going manually through the Eskom bills and through the Eskom tariff book. If there is a problem, please could you let us know in writing, and also don't be afraid to do it manually if it seems to not be working out. This is just trying to make the process quicker. However, if you find that something isn't calculated properly, you can always do it manually as well.